Good morning, friends. Thanks for being here this morning on Journey Home Meditation for the morning sit. I'm Michael. I'm going to be bringing us through a little bit of contemplation. We'll read some poetry this morning. We'll do some breathing together and maybe find that bit of peace and calm and meditation. So thanks for joining along, and I am happy to be here today. So this morning, I have been thinking about work. I've been thinking a lot about work. And I've been thinking about it in terms of all of the work that I have to do today because I'm sitting in my workplace. I'm sitting in the office of Journey Home Support Services. But also, I've been on the phone pretty much all morning since around 7:30, doing work-related tasks, and now I'm getting prepared to do more work. And I've been thinking about this because doing the work is something that we often hear in the worlds of mental health, or this very poorly thought out name of self-help. I don't know what that's all about, but I have a lot of things to say about when we use the word self as a descriptor. I understand what the intention is, but I have some issue, and most of those issues are my personal issues, right? Those are my personal beefs that I have. But things like self-care and self-help, who's helping who? If I think it's important to recognize that myself is comprised of so many things make up who I am, make up the self, at least, who I think I am. And that self is always changing. That self is always being challenged, and that self is always up for conversation and maybe even a little conjecture. And that makes me think about that phrase, do your work. Are you doing your work? It's even a phrase that I've used. I've used it almost weaponized in my life. It's like to challenge somebody who you're having conflict with. I know that I've probably said that to Angela, my wife, in one of our arguments. We get into arguing, married 21 years. We have arguments. And sometimes that conflict is really good for bringing us into better awareness. And sometimes that conflict is just conflict. It's just an expression of frustration. And I know that I've definitely used that phrasing, do your work. You're not doing your work, as this pejorative, as this which is always funny for an anti-capitalist perspective, to talk about doing your work as being somehow necessary, which is kind of what I've been thinking about this morning, is the language of work and what it means, what identification I have with work and doing the work. Now, I think that when we're talking about spiritual growth or recognition of growth, when we're talking about living in that plane of existence, right? Living in that on the level of the psychology and the spirituality of my existence, on that plane of existence, doing the work means something different than in this physical plane of existence, where we have to go to our jobs. Doing your work and doing your job are two different things. People can skate by doing the least that they can on when they're doing their job. I'm just doing my job. And I don't fault anyone for that. I think it's probably exhausting. I remember in my life having jobs where I could skate by doing the minimum and how exhausting that was for me on a spiritual level, because that means that for X amount of hours a day, I am not engaging the entirety of my being. But, I don't expect people to do that for the wages that we get paid. Right? Do what you have to do, friend. Like, make it work for you. Get it done. Whatever you need to do to meet your needs, pay your bills. I understand, and I think we need to be a lot more forgiving of that. But recognizing that just doing your job is exhausting. It's exhausting because there's labor being done that does not allow for the participation of your emotional self. It doesn't invite the spiritual self. It doesn't play. It doesn't dance. It doesn't do those things for us. And so for me, I had to try to get out of that world of 9 to 5, clock in, clock out, kind of just doing my job. And I find that that's what it is to do the work. And in doing the work, you're doing that thing which brings forth growth. Doing the work brings forth abundance. And I think I take that from reading the poetry of, where is this fly coming from? There's a fly in here that just wants to hang out. The poetry of Wendell Berry has really changed the way that I view the language of doing the work. It takes away the sting of capitalism from it, because Wendell Berry is talking about doing the work in a whole different way. I think Wendell Berry is talking about the work being the work on the relationship, the work on, his personal relationship to the land, his relationship to the food that he's cultivating from the plants that he has relationship with, the relationship to the weather, to the sun, to the rain and the drought, the way that we relate to everything in our living space, and recognizing that I am not a self alone within this context. Within the context of the relationships that I have, I am a part of the fabric of something greater than just the self. The self is supported and the self supports others, if there are such a thing as others. Ramana Maharshi would question that. Or at least maybe not even question. Ramana Maharshi would admonish that and say there are no others, which even more importantly illustrates what the self is. The self is made of others. The self is made of our relationships. And so when we're talking about doing the work, we're talking about working those relationships. The way that a farmer would work the land, or a poet would work the page, or a chef would work with the elements of fire and salt and do all these things to create this appealing and delicious and nourishing experience. I think that's it. I think that experience is the work. And let me connect a couple things from my morning to see where that thought process comes in. I was listening to Vivek Murthy, who is the Surgeon General, U.S. Surgeon General. And he wrote a book called Together, where he addresses the crisis of loneliness as a health crisis in our country. First time in history that we have a Surgeon General addressing an issue that seems to be unrelated to health, as saying that this is one of the most important health crises in our culture, is loneliness. And Vivek Murthy was saying this morning in this conversation I was listening to, where he said he was experiencing great loneliness, especially in the beginning of COVID, um, not because of his solitude, but because of his isolation. And he makes it clear the difference between solitude and isolation. And he said, in my solitude, I'm spending a time in myself with everything. I'm spending that time to be able to wait, to be patient, to listen, to engage on a level that's different from expectation. And that's important, to engage on a level different from expectation. And he said, when I'm isolated, I'm living in my mind. I'm living in this fear, and I'm living in this space of shut offness. But what he said exactly was, well, I'm going to paraphrase, but what he said was, uh, I was experiencing not having friendships. And he said, and I knew in my head that that was wrong because I knew in my head that I had friends. And here I was spending my whole day on the phone, messaging, text messaging, reading articles, sending messages. I'm sitting with my family for breakfast and I'm on my phone messaging and doing all of these very important things for my job, doing all these things. And I'm feeling this isolation while doing all of that. And he said his wife reminded him, you have friends, but you're not experiencing friendship. And that was really powerful to me to hear that. You have friends, you're just not experiencing friendship. And that's not a criticism of his friends. She was saying to him, you know that you have these friends, but you're not letting them in, and you're not doing the work of relationship with your friends. You're not calling your friends to talk. And you know that your friends would probably really love to talk to you. You know that they would probably really appreciate that phone call or that message, but there's a fear that you have of something, and I don't know what it is, that you are not reaching out, whether it's guilt or shame or embarrassment or feelings of resentment that they're not reaching out to you. Whatever those feelings are, you're choosing to cultivate your relationship to that fear or cultivate your relationship to that shame or that resentment. You're cultivating something. You're doing the work somewhere. What is it that you're doing the work on? And that idea of you have friends, but you're not experiencing friendship. It's like eating food but not being nourished. You're not eating the food that's nourishing you. You're not putting your effort and your time and your energy into nourishment. You're just eating kind of saccharine sweet junk food. And that's what I'm starting to recognize about media on the phone, social media. All of these things are giving you the feeling or the giving you the idea of information, but it's not giving us the relationship, the experience, and it's not allowing us to do the work. And even in that same conversation, he said, he talked about waiting, and it really sent my mind spiraling into this like squirrel that I was chasing for a while I was driving and listening. That we don't wait anymore. We're not cultivating our capacity to wait. Anytime that we are waiting on something, we are in our phones. We are occupying our mind. We are getting instant gratification on some sort, usually something challenging or negative or something that inflames us in some way. Not always. Maybe it's different for everyone. But that not waiting, being cultivating that level of impatience has been really beneficial for things like Amazon.com. It's been really beneficial for online shopping, and it's been really beneficial for us meeting those wants and desires of acquiring something for our safety or our security, right? I mean, it's pretty well documented that purchasing something does touch into the similar feelings of safety and security. You're feeling a sense of safety and security. And this is what leads to shopping addictions and hoarding and things like this. It's all a search for safety and security. But when we can cultivate waiting, sitting in silence, sitting in that space with anticipation, we cultivate that strength of relationship to being present with what's happening here inside of my body and in this space as I wait. And I listen. And it's really beneficial to me. It's been really beneficial to me to not take my phone out and just wait. And that's work. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. It's work to cultivate patience when we've been working so hard cultivating our impatience. It's work to cultivate sensitivity when we work so diligently for so long to cultivate numbness. It's work to cultivate kindness when we cultivate survival. And survival isn't kind. There's a great line in a song by a band called the Co-Defendants that said, what is it? Survival. Uh, Hold on, I'm going to pull this lyric up. Here I am being impatient. It's something like survival isn't pretty, it's flesh hanging off of fangs. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Survival isn't pretty, it's flesh hanging off of fangs. And that idea that when we are in survival mode, we are not necessarily cultivating kindness. We're not cultivating compassion, and we're not cultivating patience because we are literally trying to make our next breath. So we're doing whatever we have to do to get that thing that we need. And so there's work there. There's work to be done when we are cultivating. We are cultivating removing the sense that I am fighting for survival and replacing that with this sense of waiting. And I dare to use the cliched word of abundance. I wish there was another way, another word that was coming to my mind in this moment, but there's just not. But that's what it is. It's bounty. It's a way to find that when I can be still and I can be silent, I can recognize that in this very moment, with this in-breath and this out-breath, I have everything I need in this very moment. Now, that may not be true on a larger material scale. I may be sitting and breathing in and breathing out, having everything I need in that moment while not having a home. Well, I need a home. But in that moment of this breath to this breath, I have what I need. And recognizing that can allow me the space. And spaciousness is a whole different type of wealth. Spaciousness allows us so much more to be able to do our work. So I've got a poem to read. I was gonna, I've read the poem Wild Geese by Mary Oliver, and it's probably one of her most shared poems that she ever wrote. You could probably find it on 10,000 or more blogs, and there's probably a few hundred people reading it on YouTube. Wild Geese is an amazing poem. And I just learned by listening to a very rare Mary Oliver interview, she rarely did them, that this poem was written as work. It was written as work. She was teaching, And she was teaching an exercise in end stop lines where each line of the poem is its own line. It ends with a period. Um, so where these statements are not open-ended statements, but each statement in the poem is its own statement. And she wasn't intending to write one of the most shared poems of the last 50 years. She wasn't intending to write a poem that spoke deeply into the hearts of so many thousands upon thousands of people. She was just doing an exercise. She was doing some work to help a friend. She was helping a student who was a friend of hers to experience this style of writing, to make these statements, these declarations that are complete sentences. And she ended up writing Wild Geese, which I'm not going to read that poem today. I want you to look that one up if you'd like. The poem I'm going to read today by Mary Oliver is Messenger. And the poem says this: My work is loving the world. Here the sunflowers, there the hummingbird, equal seekers of sweetness. Here the quickening yeast, there the blue plums, here the clam deep in the speckled sand. Are my boots old? Is my coat torn? Am I no longer young and still half perfect? Let me keep my mind on what matters, which is my work, which is mostly standing still and learning to be astonished. The phoebe, the delphinium, the sheep in the pasture and the pasture, which is mostly rejoicing since all the ingredients are here, which is gratitude, to be given a mind and a heart, and these body clothes, a mouth with which to give shouts of joy to the moth and the wren, to the sleepy dug up clam, telling them all over and over how it is that we live forever. I just love Mary Oliver. I love her work. My work is loving the world. That is work. It's not hard. It's not difficult. We don't have to treat it the way that we treat our jobs. The work is the play. The work is the relationship. It's the deepening and the enriching of who we are because of this thing that we are doing. You know, it's not just what we are doing, but it's how we are being that is the doing. How we are being is the doing. My work is to love the world. You know, my work is loving the world. And that's what I've been thinking about today. I've been thinking about my work as I'm doing my work. And I think I'm going to try really, really, really intently to not use that as a weapon in my life, to not challenge other people as a weapon, whether or not they're doing their work. And I guess that's where I'm at. So thanks for being here today. Let's just take a few minutes. Let's do the work. If you can, close your eyes and let's find our meditation posture, that place of balance within our bodies. And really, this time when you're breathing in and out, really want to ask if you can take the moment to remember in your body that deep relationship of love. Remember that feeling of embrace. I want you to remember that feeling of being held. To remember is to make a member again, to bring that feeling into our body, To be a member is to be one in a group of many, to be a part of the whole. I am a member. To remember, to become whole again. Remember that feeling of being embraced as you breathe into the bottom of the belly. Let that feeling of sensation move through your core. As you breathe out, let the emptying of the body feel like a surrender. Breathing in, wow, just marvel at that amazing moment. If you feel it, if it's something you can do right now, just to invite that memory in your body, and that sense memory of being held, of feeling the embrace of everything kind of holding you in. When you can feel that embrace and that hold, you don't have to hold so tightly out of fear that if you don't, you're just going to fall apart. So, breathing in, I am held. Breathing out, I am letting go. Just let go and surrender to that being held. That's your work. That's your work today. Your work is to catch yourself in those moments where you can breathe in and feel held. And when you can breathe out completely, and just let it go. Some of us are going to find that place in our thoughts where this sounds good, but it's not made real. I've done this and I do this sometimes. It's in my head. Oh, okay, here we go. Another talk about noticing your breath and feeling the embrace of the universe. Great, got it. Yeah, there's a lot of talk about that in the world. There's a lot of people doing meditations that talk about exactly the things that I talk about feeling these things. But the work is not in listening to the words. It doesn't take much work to do that. You can listen to those words all day and just be doing your job. You can think that I'm doing my job as a spiritual practitioner to listen to people tell me about their deep connection to everything, and then in my head process, yes, I am deeply connected to everything, and still not feel it at all. It's that thing that Vivek Murthy's wife told him. You have friends, but you do not let yourself experience friendship. Yeah, you have spiritual teachers. Are you doing the work to actually embody the practice? It's up to you. It's up to all of us. Some days I am, some days I'm not. Some days it's lip service. I'm just telling myself these things. That's okay. That's a practice. Keeping a practice is to maintain trying. But the days when I can touch in, that's when I'm doing the work. And it's like I'm kneading this dough that's going to rise and become this nourishing bread. And when you feel it, it moves through you. So thanks for being here, everyone. Thanks for giving this time. I took a little extra time today. It's okay. I appreciate your messages. And if you would like to reach out to me, you can email me at journeyhomemeditation@gmail.com. I can get your messages there easily. And if you'd like a response, you can indicate that. And if you'd like for me to share your message on the morning broadcast, I would be happy to share your thoughts, your questions, your input, your criticisms, whatever it is. You can also leave a voice message. If you follow the link that I share on Facebook, if you look up, I think it's even on the Spotify. There's a link on Spotify to leave a message. So you can find us on Spotify, Audible, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Facebook. Just look around. All right, everyone. Thanks for being here. I so appreciate you. Hadi Om.